The year is 2020, the world is engulfed in a pandemic, and everyone is locked inside. So, to retain any sort of normalcy, your boy did what any normal human being would do, and that's crack open their old Nintendo Wii. That's when I noticed an old memory from a bygone era: Pokemon Ranch. A WiiWare Pokemon game that basically functioned as glorified extra storage space. Players could deposit Pokemon from their Diamond and Pearl versions, and watch them on screen walk around with their Miis in 3D. A few clicks from the Wii menu, and all the memories came flooding back. I was surrounded by hundreds of Pokemon that a young 9-year-old Itzjhon spent countless hours catching and raising in his beloved Pokemon Pearl. I still remember counting down the days, and getting Pokemon Pearl right on the day it released, which proceeded to consume all of my free time for the foreseeable future, doing virtually everything possible in these games multiple times over. Pay no attention to the level 3 legendaries and mythicals. I assure you, they are 100% legit, but seeing all these guys brought back a lot of fond memories. Memories that I could keep with me forever, thanks to the power of Pokemon Home. As I went to the withdraw menu, I remembered something very uncharacteristic of myself. I lost my Pokemon Pearl. In addition to the loss of a lot of my prized Pokemon, this is a catastrophic problem, because the only way to withdraw from Pokemon Ranch is with the same game that put them in. All of these nearly 20-year-old Pokemon were stranded, imprisoned in Pokemon Ranch. But I was determined to free my boys, so I started to devise a plan on how to get them out. My first option was to find my old Pokemon Pearl. Seeing as it was lost roughly 14 years ago in a renovation, I think it's safe to say this one ain't happening. So I spent weeks researching and thinking of ways to get them out. Every time I booted the game, it felt like I was visiting a jail.
I'm gonna get you out of here! I promise you, I'm gonna get you out of there!
So I had to get creative, and I found just the type of solution I was looking for. If you've been playing Pokemon for a while, you may have come across some clearly fake Pokemon. You know those shiny ones you get off Wonder Trade? Well, those Pokemon are created with the help of save editors. And this got me thinking, Pokemon Ranch must have a save file somewhere on my Wii. If I was able to open that save file in a save editor, I would be able to essentially copy them over and get them back into a mainline game, thus saving them. All I would theoretically need is an SD card, and just copy it over from my Wii. So I boot it up, locate the save, and attempt to move it over. This is where I hit my first big roadblock. You see, the Wii doesn't allow you to move the saves for any WiiWare games. And just our luck, Pokemon Ranch is a WiiWare game. But what if there was an alternate way of retrieving that save? You see, a normal Wii might not be able to, but you can do a lot of things with a homebrew or modded Wii, like extracting WiiWare saves. So I found some save extraction software and went to work. But, just my luck, none of them seemed to work. And this is where we hit our second big roadblock. You see, young Itzjhon was a pretty smart kid. Well, what if I told you my Wii had already been homebrewed years ago? Because of this, it was outdated and incompatible with the save extractors. I theoretically could remod my Wii and update it, but with my limited knowledge on the subject, that would run the risk of bricking my Wii. And if I brick my Wii, that Pokemon Ranch save file and all the Pokemon trapped inside it dies with it, which was a risk I was not willing to take. The dream was dead. And with that, I shelved the whole project. I had to succumb to the realization that all these Pokemon would be forever imprisoned in Pokemon Ranch, stuck behind a screen. But your boy was not about to give up, because I made those fellas a promise.
I promise you, I'm gonna get you out of there!
All this time, I'd been so focused on finding some sort of back entrance. But what if I turned my attention to the lock on the door? So I started to do some more research, which led me to this one post from 15 years ago. According to this post, this person was able to deposit and withdraw Pokemon on different game carts. But there were some conditions. For this to work, both games needed to have the same trainer name, gender, trainer ID, secret ID, and start date. The plan was simple. Basically, we fool Pokemon Ranch into thinking we're withdrawing with the lost Pokemon Pearl version by using a different copy of Pokemon Pearl with all the same details. Normally, this would be extremely easy to do, but because the copy of Pokemon Pearl we need the details from is long gone, this becomes a near impossible task. By some stroke of luck, the stars would align to make this somewhat possible. Remember those save editors I was talking about earlier? Well, as the name suggests, they can do a lot more than just edit Pokemon. They can edit practically anything. So theoretically, if I knew all the info of my original Pearl, I could edit a save file on a different copy of Pokemon Pearl to have all the required credentials. Problem is, it's impossible for me to remember the trainer ID, let alone the secret ID of that long lost game. But again, the stars aligned because I just so happened to have some Pokemon from that original Pokemon Pearl file in my Pokemon Platinum. Namely, this totally not action replayed Shaman that I transferred over in hopes of turning it into its Sky form. Just like looking at DNA, a quick upload into a save editor reveals basically everything I would need to know about my old save file. My trainer name, gender, trainer ID, and even secret ID. However, there was one thing I was still missing. The start date. Which, there was absolutely no way of finding out unless I opened the game. Again, all hope seemed lost. But this, fellas, is why memories are truly priceless. I still remember counting down the days and getting Pokemon Pearl right on the day it released. April 22nd, 2007. The North American release date of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. The final key. Even with all these miracles, there was no guarantee that all this would work. After all, this was all from some random post on NintendoLife.com in 2009. But this was my only hope. If this plan didn't work, those Pokemon would be trapped in there forever. So I injected all the necessary credentials into a new Pokemon Pearl. We were now ready to face Pokemon Ranch for one final battle. I boot up the game, attempt to withdraw, and we did it. It may have been long overdue, but they were finally free. One by one, I was able to withdraw all my old fellas. Majority of the 250 plus Pokemon stored in here were action replayed legendaries, but a good chunk of them were from the very first days I got the game, which I still remember catching. However, amongst all the action replayed legendaries, and Pokemon old enough to graduate from high school, there was one Pokemon I found that shocked me to my core. A Pokemon more valuable than any other in this box. This Chimecho. A Chimecho? Really? What's so special about that? Well, for that, we need a little bit of a story time. The year is 2007. Young Itzjhon is at his first cross-country tournament. Unfortunately for him, none of his friends had made it as far as he did, so he was forced to awkwardly sit with the older kids. When he got there, he noticed they were all huddled around one kid playing on a DS. Upon closer inspection, he was playing the newly released Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. This definitely caught young Itzjhon's attention. But because he was way too shy, he awkwardly watched from a distance. On that tiny little DS screen, he could make out the backspread of a Pokemon with a noticeable yellow head. This unknown Pokemon was throwing out some strong attacks and KOing everything before it. That night, young Itzjhon booted up his own copy of Pokemon Pearl. He was traversing through Mount Coronet when he encountered a new Pokemon, Chingling. Now young Itzjhon was pretty smart for his age, and started making connections in his head. That mysterious Pokemon from earlier today had a spherical yellow head. This small Pokemon is basically just a spherical yellow head. Surely Chingling over here evolves into that mysterious Pokemon, he thought. That kid must have come through here, picked up one of these guys, and evolved it. So young Itzjhon caught it and made it a mainstay on his team. As he progressed through the game, he kept wondering when it would evolve. His Chingling was nearly level 40 and still nothing. So he checked the Pokedex to see if he could get a clue, and noticed something that filled him with dread. You see, Pokemon in the Pokedex are for the most part next to the Pokemon they evolve into, and next to Chingling wasn't an empty spot. but rather Chimecho. Despite this information, young Itzjhon tried his best to disregard it, and hold on to a false hope that his Chingling would turn into something cool. Maybe Chimecho evolves into that new Pokemon, he thought. But all that copium would be put to rest when a certain yellow Pokemon appeared in the plot, Uxie. This legendary Pokemon fit the exact description of that mysterious back sprite, which had absolutely nothing to do with Chingling. And as the final nail in the coffin, Itzjhon's Chingling ironically evolved through friendship into the lackluster Chimecho, which was then immediately thrown into the PC box, never to be seen again. Since then, I've resented the Pokemon Chingling, and sort of became a running joke on the channel. I never thought I'd see the little guy again, let alone save him. And now, he resides in my Pokemon home, and basically comes with me everywhere I go. And hey, it might be perfect timing for his return, cause who knows? Chimecho could get an evolution, or hell, even a Mega now that it's coming back. In such a weird twist of fate, by me disregarding it and throwing it into Pokemon Ranch, I unknowingly saved it. And honestly, that made me really happy. At the time, a lot of the Pokemon I threw in Ranch were Pokemon I didn't really care about. Pokemon I caught early into the game, or dropped from my final team. But those are the Pokemon that older me appreciates the most. It's like young me left a little time capsule for myself, and now I can appreciate these memories for the rest of my life. One day able to be passed down to my future kids, which is crazy to think about. But till then, they'll be joining me on my adventures. Truly, a treasured memory. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed that little bit of Itzjhon lore. Do you guys have any cherished Pokemon memories? I make sure to read every comment, so let me know what you guys think down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. It really helps your boy out. But anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Ciao, fellas.